Alien, released in 1979 and directed by Ridley Scott, is considered by many to be the ultimate movie of the science fiction horror genre. Since its release, it has won a plethora of awards and has become famous for its outstanding visuals, design, direction, and its terrifying claustrophobic premise. We look back at this cinematic masterpiece.
Alien is just, for me, I get asked, I don't watch it every week, but if you asked me to define possibly the best science fiction film ever, I would actually go for Alien. I wish Ridley had never gone back to it because he stuck a real big wrench in the works. But if you just forget about even Aliens, just go back to Alien and you've got probably the best science fiction film for me ever made. Again, it's one of the big things you've got. So much, it's perfect, really. But the only thing that dates it is the computer graphics. That's the only thing when you go back to it.
But I like the little stuff. Just those early scenes that establish the characters and the whole setting, where you see the camera prowling around the corridors of the spaceship. You've got that little scene of the two duck things, sort of just and these empty corridors, and then you see the cryogenic chambers, and they wake up. And I think the scene I really like is just that very naturalistic scene where they've all just woken up and they're just sitting around the table eating and chatting and just being themselves. And that's one of the things I like about the film, that sort of naturalism in the sense of dialogue. It's very naturalistic, ordinary dialogue. They cut across each other when they're talking. They're these people who are out doing a job in deep space. And I just like that. I love all the alien stuff and the monster stuff and the blood stuff, but I like all those little ordinary scenes of people just doing their job and sitting around chatting to each other. And that sets you up for what's to come in a way. You sort of, because you know, even if you've not seen the film, you know what it is. You know broadly know what's coming, and it sets up these characters in quite a nice way. It doesn't do it in an overwrought way that they tend to do in films these days by, like pointing out, saying nice guy, nasty guy, sex symbol, first to get their head bitten off. It's just done in a laid back sort of easy way, and that's great scripting. And I think stuff like that sticks with me as much as if not more than all the blood and gore and the monster bits.
Sigourney Weaver gets in the spacesuit in the escape capsule because she's just discovered that the alien is in the escape capsule with her. That is the atmosphere and the music and everything with that scene is absolutely phenomenal. And it's the scene that you think 20 minutes earlier when they escape from the Nostromo.
Yeah.
That is the climax of the film, and like all Aliens films, there is another climax to follow, and that scene is absolutely fantastic. You think the film is ending if you haven't seen it, and away we go again.
Just when they encounter the ship and the space jockey and things like that, I think it's that first, you think, oh, this is another worldly alien place. The space jockey is astounding, and you don't realise the scale of it until you see the characters at the side of the space jockey, and they look tiny compared to that guy in that cockpit who's so I think the chest burster scene is obviously the one that everybody remembers, but I think the descent into the ship and when you first see the eggs and they've got the laser lights that's coming down, the blue light that flows across the eggs, I think that really sets the scene. You sort of realise what you might be getting into there. So I think that part of the film is that's what grabs you.
I think because the way it's directed, I mean, Ridley's really clever. You don't see that alien, do you? It's like lurking in the shadows. So I was like this, and I did not know when it was going to pop up. I mean, that chest burster scene, you watch that for the first time, and I'd seen sort of clips, But when you watch it fully, it was like, whoa, yeah, it got me. And even the bit with the egg, that, because I didn't know that was coming. So as soon as it comes out, it was like, I mean, now it doesn't scare me, but you still know it's coming, and it's still effective even today.
There's the legendary John Hurt chest burster scene. You know, that's just naturally insanely intense because this guy's having something burst through his chest. Yeah, it's okay. It's going to be a bit of, but I think when you say freaked out, definitely the room with the chains, because it's just so tense. You haven't properly seen Alien by this point. You know, there's things going in the tail and stuff like that. It just all looks dark, creepy, and just really well put together because, you know, it was filmed insanely well. Maybe one of the best scenes, obviously, Ripley running around with a flamethrower. Yeah, nearing the end of the film, it's just so cool.
There are cast of people that you would never get cast now because they're too ordinary looking. And it's so sad because the cast give Alien such gravitas because they're just like people. They're like the staff room at work, you know, and so they really feel for these people, and you know they're not Supermen, and they're not just going to be able to pull someone out of the bag, so that you're with them from the start.
And also, apart from John Hurt, actors that have not seen or been seen in film before, that's you automatically become relatable as the characters in the film because you've never seen them before. So I think it was great that they were cast. All the characters are absolutely fantastic in it.
And then the genius of the director at that time, don't know what the hell's happened since. Anyway, but in that time, was he employed two different designers. So we had Ron Cobb for the industrial human, and then a totally different designer for the alien. And he, thank the Lord, got Giger, who was just one of my art heroes. And why he was never employed properly since, again, what the hell was Hollywood thinking? Why didn't Scott get him back? I'm just like, anyway, mind blown. Anyway, ultimately, I think possibly one of the greatest scenes in science fiction is the scene when Kane and Dallas and everyone, they go on and they first see the space jockey engineer, the space jockey, and it zooms up on that set, and it's a practical set, and it's just, I think, one of the greatest visions of genuine alien technology. It doesn't look like it was built here at all. And at the time, I think Giger, however you want to pronounce it, was not as well known. Certainly I'd never seen his work before, and it just was astonishing, and it felt like a proper alien ship. It didn't feel like it had been made on Earth and people in rubber suits went on and pretended to be aliens. It was none of that. It was totally, it even made Star Wars, which at the time was like, wow, it made that look quite Earth-like because it was so alien, and the creature itself was just bloody hell, really. Hey, I mean, it was just the greatest monster probably ever.
What we have got in Alien is probably the first strong female sci-fi lead. So before Janeway and you know, Star Trek, we've got Ripley, and Ripley is, I think she's probably been a role model for generations of girls, so I don't know about where Alien stemmed from, what its precursors were, but I think its legacy is, you can see that all over the place in sci-fi, with later films that's got strong female leads.
The influences, I think it's sort of influenced by some of those 1950s films, like It Came From Outer Space. I think there's one in particular, which I think is that one where some astronauts go to Mars or something and an alien creeps on board the spaceship, and I think that is supposed to be a direct influence on it. So I think it's very much influenced by those 1950s Forbidden Planet-y type films of explorers going out and finding something strange out in space. And the influence it's had since, but I think it's influenced it influences any sort of film that's come since, which is about any creature films, really, about people trapped in an enclosed environment with something terrible there, whether it's a monster, whether it's a shark or a crocodile. I watched a film on the weekend, which is coming out next week, called Blackwater Abyss, which is an Australian film about people trapped in a cave being terrorized by a crocodile. And I thought, well, this sort of has its roots in things like Alien as well, in a way. Something terribly stalking people who can't get away from it. So I think the tendrils of it, if you like, it sort of creeps right through horror and science fiction ever since, in a way. I think it's one of the ones that people look back as a template for these sorts of films.
If you watch Leviathan, that's Alien underwater, isn't it? Deep Star 6, that's Alien underwater. And there's what's the other one? There's loads of like mid-80s films that have copied it. But I mean, really, I'm probably going to get into trouble for this, but if you think about it, Ridley was very clever, and he nicked off Spielberg, because in Jaws you don't really see the shark a lot, do you? And then he's done the same with the alien creature. It's lurking in the shadows right till the very end, and it works. If you keep the alien out of the scene, you're looking left, right and centre, and you just don't know when it's appeared. I mean, the best scene is that one that I sent to you, where Dallas is in the tunnel and you're literally bricking it. It's like, when's it going to pop up? And then it's there for a quick second. And
that is an interesting question indeed, and one I have actually given much thought to. Planet of the Vampires, which you probably, I dare say, David, you've heard of.
Yeah.
Planet of the Vampires, it's Brava, the Italian director. His film certainly it has elements of it. The giant corpse, the landing on the planet. But then you've got It, the Terror from Outer Space is often quoted. This sort of creature going through the ship. And I think Ridley Scott does like sci-fi. So I think the chances are he will have seen those films. As a student of film, I just can't believe he won't have seen like Italian sci-fi horror, because it's just so unique. And like It, the Terror from Outer Space was the sort of film that would do the round. So I suspect he probably saw them. And Dan O'Bannon, sorry, it's Dan O'Bannon. I'm saying Ridley Scott. It's Dan O'Bannon. Dan O'Bannon will have seen those films, because he was totally into genre film and everything. So yeah, I suspect they did have an influence. I think the new bit was the chest burster. And that comes back to, that's the bit where apparently all the execs in Fox went, what? That was the bit, I think that sold them, from what I gather, just on DVDs I've seen. Ark in Space is interesting, isn't it? Because it sort of bears a resemblance, doesn't it? I find it's whether or not Dan O'Bannon would have sat down and watched 1970s Tom Baker, isn't it? This is what this argument hinges on. Did Dan O'Bannon sit down and watch Tom Baker's Ark in Space in 1975?
It's possible, though, because when you think that Spielberg watched it and Lucas watched it, and Ridley Scott was certainly aware of it, because there's rumours he worked on Doctor Who in the 60s. Was it the Ark or something?
Yes, he did. Yeah, I mean, it's a funny one, isn't it? It's the sort of it's the old wasp larvae bit, isn't it? That bears the closest. I mean, you can tell. My jury's out on that one. Do you think so? Do you think they saw it? What do you think?
I think it's an interesting theory, and I'm not entirely sure.
I can see a connection. It's not impossible. I'd want to see proof of it, but I can see that link there. Yeah, there's certainly something there. Obviously, in a much grander scale in terms of Alien, but yeah, the theme is much the same. The story is in a way much the same. Something that infiltrates an enclave of human beings and starts to do terrible physical. It's that body horror thing as well, isn't it? With Ark in Space, the transformation thing. This is the alien that wants to survive by planting itself in humans and then killing the humans. So yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if there was something there.
I knew that was coming. I should have got the DVD out. It's funny you should say that, because I'd never thought about it until a few years ago, and I was watching it. I thought, did they did they nick that? Because it Q for the money. You're absolutely right. I mean, but the guy who wrote Alien says he took it from Dark Star, which was a film that he made with John Carpenter. So, but I don't believe him. I think he may have seen Ark in Space, or either that or Ridley nicked a bit. But apparently there are other things as well, aren't there? There are other films that they say is it something green something or other? It's a cheesy 60s film that they said they'd nicked from as well. But yeah, I know what you're saying about Ark in Space, and funnily enough, I was going to get it off the shelf and go like this, but I didn't.
Well, I think all this sci-fi stuff that's going on when Alien was being made, it's just clear for people to kind of go, I got an idea, let's make something in space, because space is making the money. So a lot of the time with things like this, that's where the inspiration comes from. It is money in the big studios, but when you create an alien like that, it's hard to know where the inspiration will come from, because it's just such a unique creature. You see people create alien monsters throughout, and there's, you've got all your classic creatures, classic monsters. Frankenstein, Frankenstein's monster, where did he come from? He came from somebody's insane mind to create this thing. And I think it's the same for the alien creature and the alien franchise, because it's, people try and copy it these days, don't they? They try and make their own unique thing. And alien films are still being made to this day, but they're never as good, for me personally, as what we've had back then, because it was a fresh creation, it was a new creation. What it inspires is, well, people to be scared out of their wits, I think, really, because I think you could show it. One of the things by Alien, because they used a lot of animatronics and stuff like that, you could show Alien to somebody now and they would still be petrified if they'd never seen it. If I could erase my memory of films, which has always been a dream of mine, to be able to watch a film for the first time, play a game for the first time, I would still, I think I'm 33, as a 33-year-old man, be petrified of that film if I didn't know what was coming. So I think it just inspires you to be afraid, and it inspires other people to be creative, I think, with their ideas of films and stuff, because it's just such a unique idea when it was first made, I think, that this spaceship house horror, and I love that. I love that.
I think for me, and I like a slightly faster, I like a slightly a faster film. Aliens, for me, is the best one out of them. But Alien, when it came out, you can see it was a game changer. It was, the effects, like I say, Geiger's Alien, there's Xenomorph. To me, it's almost akin to 2001. The slow pacing and especially the effects. They've gone to so much trouble for the practical effects. Obviously, there's no CGI there. But if you look at 2001, spaceship design and how it's filmed, an Alien, it's very similar. Because it's not that, yes, obviously 2001's a lot earlier, but it's very, very similar to the effects, and it's still astounding. I think it still holds up. All those effects hold up. All those practical effects still look better than most CGI effects do nowadays, with the spaceships.
The first time I saw Alien was on TV. And I do remember watching half the film and thinking, this is nowhere near as good as Aliens. It's not as action-packed. It's a lot darker. I can barely see anything. And I don't recognise anybody from the Aliens film, so I switched it off. And I think it was probably about 1987, 1988 when I got to watch the film again, properly, on VHS. And I still didn't like it. And it's only, I would say, in the last 10 years that I've grown to absolutely adore the film. I do take a lot of convincing with things like that, as you know. But I think as years have gone by, I respect it and love it a lot more than I originally did.
Close second, of course, is Aliens. But that's a different sort of film. That's more of a war film, an action film, whereas Alien is clearly a horror film. But I think there's not much room between the two of them. They're both fantastic films in their own right. And I wouldn't really give the time of day to any of the rest of them, to be honest. I've seen all the rest of them. I've watched them. But it's diminishing returns every time. So I think anybody who's not watched the Alien or Alien films, just watch those two, because there's not a lot. Alien Resurrection has its moments, but everyone just diminishes it a little bit. So I think it's the first two, really. There's a shade between the two of them, but they're both great films.
Aliens is probably my personal favourite and the best out of the franchise. It is hard to kind of compare the two because Alien is very much a house horror, isn't it? You know, one thing stuck in this space, you know, being crept on. And Aliens 2 is like, look at this pulse rifle we got, you know, and fire away. So, you know, I think Aliens brings a lot more. They got a lot more character and a lot more action, and you know, you see the aliens in a bit more of its glory of grouped up as like an infestation. So I do prefer Aliens, but Alien 1 has its own unique premise of, you know, house horror, survival horror, climbing through the vents and stuff like that. And you know, I think one of the most memorable scenes in Alien is, I always forget the characters' names in Alien, but when the guy's in the vents and he turns around with his torch and the alien just opens his hands and it's there and it's like, oh god. So yeah, Aliens is definitely better, but you know, nothing taken away from Alien itself.
Like Aliens is like gung ho and stuff, but for sinister and for on the money, Alien has got to be the best one. I mean, you can't top it because even today it's still creepy. I mean, I don't know what your thoughts are on the added scenes that they took out. I watched both, and I still like the fact that they put that scene back in. It doesn't work, but I still think it was a nice idea. And I think that other directors thought, oh, let's try that. But yeah, Alien, hands down, is the best. It's the definitive film. I mean, people are still copying it today.
Way ahead of its time. So well done. Well produced. The atmospheric music is out of this world.